Hello, my name is Paul. I'm the Accidental Bookseller. Welcome to the channel. Today we've got something a little bit different in that a lot of channels and Booktube in general seems to concentrate on fiction books. Maybe I just haven't found some non-fiction channels yet, but I've been collecting books up since probably about the middle of February that I've been buying and just keeping them on my dining room table with the intention of doing a book haul, because I started watching Booktube around the beginning of Feb. Knew straight away almost that I wanted to do a channel, but never really got round to it. And you got different types of fantasy, like dark fantasy, just normal fantasy, romantasy, high fantasy. Well, my definition of high fantasy is being able to get my car in my garage at some point because there's so much rubbish in there. And my dining table's heading the same way if I don't do this haul. So yeah, I'm going to do a haul based upon all the books that I've bought of a not of a romantic nature, don't get worried, of a non-fiction nature since February, and there's quite a few. So I keep all my books, as I've said before, that I want on a Amazon wish list that's split into different genres of wish lists, and whether I buy them from Amazon, it doesn't really matter because I just keep them on there because it's just a nice tally of what I want. So sometimes I'll buy in an independent bookshop or a chain bookshop, or sometimes I'll buy it off the internet. I prefer to buy in the flesh, and I'm prepared to go £1 or £2 more. But if there's a Amazon sale on for £6-7 cheaper, I'm not. Well, I don't have the money to say, oh, I'm going to buy it in the independent bookshop. I keep an eye out in the shops, keep an eye out online, and if any of my wish lists drop to a certain point, I'll pounce and get them, regardless of whether I'm going to get to them sooner or later. But even if they're later, I'd rather spend £5 or £6 when it comes cheaper rather than wait until I want to read it and have to spend more money. So I tend to be about a year behind on non-fiction from when I buy it to when I read it. So without further ado, we'll go through it. It's quite a few. First book is The Way of the Hermit by Will Mallard, My 40 Years in the Scottish Wilderness. I saw this in Waterstones, and I think I've seen the chap is recognisable. I think there's a BBC documentary done maybe 4 or 5 years ago on him, and I won't say I quite fancy being a hermit, but it does appeal. However, I think I'd have to have a supermarket nearby. I'd have to have Sky Telly. There'd have to be at least a new bookshop, a second-hand bookshop, and somewhere quite local that has, quite decent concerts. So at some point, you're not a hermit, but I I guess I'm a hermit in spirit. But yeah, so I quite fancied this, and it was supposed to be 10.99. I think I got it for a fiver in the end. Next one is Kelly and Zach Weinersmith, A City on Mars. This is a book literally about what's required to live on Mars. I think it also takes an irreverent look at it as well. So it's both serious and non-serious. And yeah, I quite fancied it because obviously I like science fiction, and there's things like Ray Bradbury and Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars, etc., etc. Lots of different things on Mars, and non-fiction book on living on Mars. Next book is Man with a Van, My Story by Drew Pritchard. My guilty pleasure is watching salvage hunters on TV. I think sometimes it can come across as quite annoying, and I guess this is just a pleasure read where you don't have to concentrate too much. And I saw it in the works for I think it was £3. I'm sure it wasn't 4. I think it was £3. So yeah, got it. This next one I got from Postscript Books online. They are a discount bookshop where new books are sold at discount. And this is Afloat, a memoir by Danny Couchman, or Danny Couchman. And it's about living on a canal narrowboat. In the same way that the Hermit book appealed, so did this. It's kind of a theme. The next book is The Barn by Sally Coulthard. The Lives, Landscape and Lost Ways of an Old Yorkshire Farm. Sally Coulthard is quite a well-known rural author, I would say, in terms of rural non-fiction. I'm not completely sure what this is about, whether it's about the barn through history, or, like it says, the lives, landscape and lost ways of an old Yorkshire farm as it relates to a barn. I quite fancied this. And yeah, one thing that I would like there to be, if there isn't already, maybe someone can enlighten me if there is if there was, like you have, I know Alan's Reads does Dickens in December, and is there Sherlock Holmes in February, and there's Jane Austen in July, and there's Garb August, and different things of different months. Is there a non-fiction month for either natural history or rural non-fiction? If there isn't, I'd maybe want to start one where you just read one book in March. With rural and natural history, I don't read them in summer, I don't read them in winter. I tend to be a spring or autumn person for those. So maybe next March, maybe I could start a non-fiction natural history or rural book. It's people's choice. Just read one book or something like that. Anyway, there's that. The next book is another Sally Coulthard. This is the Hedgehog Handbook. I got this at a book fair, having had my eye on it for a while. So about 3 years ago, 3 years ago in May, a hedgehog appeared in my garden, and it wasn't in the greatest of shape in terms of it just wasn't moving in the day. And I know people say, oh, you should get help and stuff, but I just thought it needed water. So I put some water out for it and a little bit of food. I went to the supermarket and got some hedgehog food. And after 24 hours, it was absolutely fine. It hid under there's some sort of kind of like side fencing where there's like an alcove under my garden fence where it can go. And it seemed to go in there initially. But then it stayed around. And at night, it would just like run round and round in an oval in my grass, kind of exercising. It wasn't lost her out. It was quite peculiar. So I made a feeding station. I looked online and got like a plastic clothes container and did a entry door and an exit door. Got some saucers with different types, with wet food and dry food. Some newspaper down for accidents. My God, they do produce quite a bit of waste. And yeah, and she, and well, I know later on why it was a she, but she hung around. Harriet called her. She hung around for quite a while, and then about 3 weeks into a stay, I bought a hedgehog house for her as well. And after about 3 weeks of her hanging around, underneath my gate, she could have gone the way that she arrived if she'd wanted to. But there was this almighty noise in the garden of an animal noise one evening. And I looked out, and there's another hedgehog there, a much bigger hedgehog. I suspected what might be up, what might be happening. So I can't believe I did this, but I looked on. I've searched on YouTube for hedgehog mating noises, and my God, hedgehogs make a noise when they're both in season and mating. I gave them a bit of dignity. I didn't I didn't watch, but this male hedgehog, he visited for maybe about a week, and I put more food down for him in case he wanted to stop. But he tended to like come in about sort of mid-evening, hang around till late evening, probably done his stuff between mid and late evening, and then he'd just go and leave her to do what she'd been doing. And he didn't come around after about a week, and so she was back on her own, living in my garden in the house and whatnot. And then after being in my garden for about 2 to 3 months, one day she'd gone. Maybe she got pregnant and she wanted to have the baby somewhere else. I don't know. But I was quite sad because they're so cute. And it got to the stage where initially she was quite obviously very timid when I put food out, because she'd come out for an hour just after tea in the early evening, have a exercise around, then go back in either a box or near a fence under the alcove. And then when it got dark, about 10, 11 o'clock, she'd be like 4 or 5 hours running around the garden again. So initially, whenever I went out, she was kind of cautious, but it got to the stage where she knew I was feeding the feeding station, and she'd just hang around and watch. I'd say hello, and it was just nice. So, and if she's not been back, and no hedgehogs have come back, that's the one time since I've been living here that I've had hedgehogs. But I saw this at a book fair, Hedgehog Handbook. I thought I'll get it. I'm prepared next time. Although I thought I did a decent job of looking after it last time. From hedgehogs to Cold War secret nuclear bunkers. Again, it's kind of the same theme as the hermits, the living on an arrowboat, having to stay in a nuclear bunker. It's just the whole aspect of not underground living, but secret living. It just kind of appeals. Obviously, if the moment come, I might not be so chuffed. This one is all about Cold War nuclear secret bunkers. On my wish list for ages and ages and ages, and then it was on the Amazon marketplace for something like 50p for the book, and postage was about £3 or something. I mean, there's only a little bit of creasage and it's banged a bit there, but I'm not so in need of this being a brand new anyway, although it does seem brand new. Manic Street Preachers album by album. Probably the only Manic's book that I don't have, and it just goes album by album. My favourite all-time album of any band is The Holy Bible by the Manics. Obviously, post Richie, not into them. They're not as great as they were, but they're okay. But up to Richie disappearing, outstanding. And that particular 1994-5 album, Holy Bible, unbeatable in my eyes. The Bookseller's Tale by Martin Latham, another book fair find in hardback. £5. Yeah, so I've got the Sean Bythell books. I've got, what other book? Oh, I've got the ebook that I mentioned in my mid-year tag about local book selling. and this had been on my list for ages, and I couldn't believe it when I was at the book fair and it was there in hardback. Next one is one that I didn't necessarily buy. This is Staring at God, Britain in the Great War by Simon Heffer. Simon's kind of well known for social history of how people lived in different ages. And I got a job lot of books to sell, of history books. There's about 130, 140 books for 70 quid. I think it was 70. And I've sold all but 15 of them. This one I deliberately haven't sold because I want to read it myself. So this is literally about living in Britain during the Great War. So it's not necessarily about war itself. It's about, like it says, living in Britain. But quite a doorstop. Not sure when I'll get to that because that's a bit of a daunting one. James Holland, Casino 44. I collect James Holland war non-fiction. They've got the James Holland books. They've got a fantastic feel of the paper feel. I need to get out more, I know, but the paper feel is nice. They're just really nice to touch, and the font's nice. It's just they're just a pleasurable read in the act of reading. Ben McIntyre, The Siege. This is about the siege of the Iranian embassy in 1980. I remember this on TV. It was in at the time when we only had about, what did we have? We might have only had 3 channels in 1980. I think Channel 4 came along maybe a little bit later. So there was wall-to-wall coverage of the siege as it happened and special news reports and things. And I was only 11, 12. So this has come out. I've read a few Ben McIntyres before, so I know it's going to be good. The Wide, Wide Sea, The Final Fatal Adventure of Captain James Cook by Hampton Sides. Saw this in Waterstones and fancied it and bought it. God is Dead by Andy McGrath. This is the rise and fall of Frank Vandenbroek. So I mentioned on other episodes that my sport of choice is American football. A very, very, very close second is professional cycling. Yeah, hence the Marco Pantani t-shirt. Frank Vandenbroek was kind of the George Best of cycling. He wasn't a Tour de France stage race show pony, as I call the cyclists who people think are good just because they're good at 3-week stage races. But if your body isn't small and you can't get up mountains so fast, you'd be good at other disciplines in professional cycling, namely the Spring Classics over cobbles and non-road surfaces. Races like Paris-Roubaix, who you might have heard of, Ron van Vlaanderen, Omloop, Het Nieuwsblad, Gent-Wevelgem, and Frank Vandenbroek was such a rider, but he succumbed to, let's call it, a lifestyle off the bike involving drugs, drink, all kinds of things, and he didn't make it. This is a book about his life. Next book is Truss at 10, How Not to Be Prime Minister. It wasn't in the horror section. So I do like reading politics books about the overall managing of power at the top of government rather than necessarily political biographies. The best political biography I've ever read was Peter Mandelson's The Third Man. And just to say that I'm not a right-wing person, I have met Tony Benn a couple of times for book signings. Such a nice man. Put the photograph here up or there somewhere of when I met him, and I had this t-shirt on, so hence the continuity. And that was about 10, 12 maybe more years ago. But yeah, so with regard to these type of books, I have trusted writers that I appreciate and I like. I don't like sort of scandal mongering political either memoirs or exposes. Just want to know what happened and how it all went down. And the Anthony Seldon books are good books. In fact, I've got another one in my haul. So yeah, this one is for Liz Truss's time in power. Down with the System, Serge Tankian. If you don't know Serge Tankian, he is the frontman of the band System of a Down. Chernobyl Roulette by Sergei Plokhy. I love Sergei Plokhy's work. His book on Chernobyl, it's just called Chernobyl, is fantastic. You wouldn't have thought that a book about the Chernobyl disaster would be either kind of engrossing or fast moving because of the detail necessary to do it justice. But it is absolutely superb. It's probably the best non-fiction book that I've read in the last 5 to 10 years. The TV series that was done for Sky, both the documentary series and the drama series, both in the credits had Sergei Plokhy credits. So this particular book is his most recent one, and it's about Chernobyl post the Russian invasion. So I'm looking forward to reading that one. I think I mentioned this one before in my mid-year tag, but because it's all in the same pile, it gets mentioned again. This is Once Upon a Fiend by Rat Fink, or Andrew Wilson. He's a member of the 1980s goth band Alien Sex Fiend. Been wanting this for ages, and as I said in the other post, for some bizarre reason, some new ones came for sale in Texas. So I ordered one, got it, and I'm going to be reading that soon, actually. This next one is the Barker cast interviews Occupy Midian. So you might have heard of the Clive Barker film Nightbreed, which is based upon the book Near Far End Cabal. I prefer the book Cabal by a long way. I'm not a particular great fan of Nightbreed. I think it's a bit too... It doesn't really fit, in my eyes, the atmosphere of the book. So anyway, the Barker cast interviews are... It's just a detail of and transcripts of the podcast and project to get the more updated version of Nightbreed into the film into being by the people who ran the particular podcast. Because I'm a Clive Barker collector, I wanted it, obviously, because I get everything Clive Barker related. This was stubbornly $39.99 for a long, long time. It's not that, I say a long, long time, it's only about maybe 2 to 3 years old, but it just didn't move. And I wasn't going to spend $39.99 on something that Clive Barker, whilst it's Clive Barker related, he didn't have a lot to do with the book itself. But then all of a sudden, about 2 to 3 months ago, on Amazon Marketplace, I think it was. Yeah, it was Amazon Marketplace. It was, I'm going to say, £4.50 in total, including postage, from, I think it was Music Magpie, I think. It said the condition was, I think it said good, which means potentially not very good, because you've got good, and above that you've got very good, and you've got mint, and you've got fine, and all kinds of different conditions. I thought, what the hell's wrong with it? But because it was £4.50, I am not going to refuse it. And it turned up, and it had kind of like this jam substance on it, or sticky. It was just like sticky fingerprints all over it. And because it's kind of like a card, I thought, if I use anything on this, it's going to potentially take the cover off, because there's no dust jacket. It's just embedded. The design is embedded in the boards. But anyway, I got a wet wipe that I use for cleaning my glasses, and just slowly did a little bit, and it cleaned it. Anyway, got it completely okay. So I ended up getting a pretty much as new copy of it. There was a bang, because it got delivered in one of those annoying plastic sleeve things rather than a cardboard envelope. £35 cheaper than it should be. Well chuffed. Next book is The Red Fox by H.G. Lloyd. This was on me once list for ages, and to tell you the story, one night I went outside because I left my wallet in my car. Before I went to bed, I went to get it back out of the car. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and as I walked out, just got further onto my path, and a fox appeared round the front side of my house, and we were about, I'm going to say, no more than 3 feet apart. And the fox looked at me, and I looked at the fox, and it was as if time stood still. It probably wasn't any more than 5 to 10 seconds, but it felt like a proper Mexican standoff. And it was just the most, I won't say pleasurable, but it was just an absolute privilege to be there in that moment, sharing eye contact with the fox. And because foxes are my favourite animal. It's foxes, badgers, hedgehogs, cats. So yeah, and the fox went on her or his way, and then didn't see her again, and until COVID, went during lockdown, and during lockdown, I used to go out for walks at about 11 o'clock at night, where I just, there's maybe about a mile where you can walk around the block of where I live, and whilst there's an estate of houses, it kind of borders countryside on at least two of the sides. And a couple of times as I was walking, I became aware of the fox, not necessarily following me, but just always staying at a safe distance, but round where I was. And it was just nice. And there was another time where I used to go to the supermarket really, really late during COVID as well, about 11, half 11, because it was just safer then. And there was a time where I was bringing me shopping in, and the fox was there again about, 20 to 30 yards away, just watching me. And it was just nice. So I wanted to get a book about foxes. But the trouble is, when you do some studying about what books to buy, there's quite a few more modern books that are quite judgmental and preachy about fox hunting. Now, if I like foxes, of course I'm going to be against fox hunting. So I don't need to read a book that is a bit preachy on the subject, because I would have thought most right-minded people would be against it anyway. But so I wanted a book about foxes, their habitat, their way of life, just about foxes. And the one that kept coming up was H.G. Lloyd's Red Fox, and it was, even secondhand, it's 25. It used to be 25 quid plus, and it does fluctuate in price, but it didn't really get below the 20 quid mark. But again, like whichever book it was, I can't remember. Don't know the one that. Which one was it? Oh, the Barcast one, like that one. It come down to one day. It was like £3.50 or £4 perhaps with World of Books. I can't remember which one. Yeah, it's a Batsford book as well. Yeah, so I bought it. Very pleased. Next book is more a coffee table book. The Penguin Classics. And it's just a book full of a directory of all the Penguin classics that have been released. It is a fantastic book, and I had this on my wish list for I'm going to say, when was it released? 2018. Yeah, I had it 5-6 years on my wants list. Never budged in price. Always quite dear. I'm sure it was 20 quid plus. And then in the Westwood Books in Sedbergh, I saw it for 15. So I pounced and got it. It's a book that you can you don't necessarily read cover to cover, you just dip in and dip out of. Imminent, Louis Elizondo, Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs. So do you know if you don't know who Luis Elizondo is, he is one of the leaders of the US government's ATIP program, looking into UFOs or UAPs. And at the same time as he was in office or leaving office, you'll have heard of the band Blink-182. Well, one of the guys in that is called Tom DeLonge, and he set up something called the For the Stars Foundation. And he recruited not high-powered people, but people in positions of authority to help with this foundation. They started talking with members of the US, not government, US Senate, Congress, people like Harry Reid, Marco Rubio. And instead of being a topic of humour and ridicule, they turned it around and said, okay, well, if these things exist, then it's a topic of national security more than anything, because clearly there's a security threat to at least the country, if not the wider world. And at the same time this was happening, there's a lady called Leslie Kean who wrote an article in the New York Times, and all these different strands concentrated on what's called the Tic Tac videos. Google Tic Tac videos if you haven't heard of them. Basically, there's actual videos of UFOs around US ships. Ignore the comments on the videos, because like any other thing of this nature or other nature, you get people who always want to go one step further in making up some parallel theory or explanation for it that goes one step further than fact. And before you know it, you've just got just ridiculous assertions about things. No wonder people see topics like this as an object of ridicule, because of I'm trying to be polite to describe the people who are very into it in such a way that just lies are written. But anyway, as a result of all this happening, as President Trump was leaving office just before Biden took over, COVID was ongoing, and the way that the American government manage things is, for example, COVID, Congress will approve various spending bills for releasing funds to provide COVID monetary relief. And like anything in America, when these things are voted upon, there are things called pork barrel spending. Pork barrel spending is a term used when you have to sort of grease the palms of other senators to get their vote. So let's say you want obviously you want as many votes as possible for a particular spending bill, and the guy who represents Wisconsin, he'll say, okay, you'll get your vote, but I've got this bypass that needs building round a particular city. What can you do about it? And palms get greased, but the votes come in for the particular spending bills or other bills in the US government, and it's called pork barrel spending. And anyway, for this particular COVID approval funding, which was, I think it was probably one of the, if not the last, one of the last things that happened in Trump's government, I'm going to say bizarrely or not, but approval was sought, funding was sought into production of the report, into the TikTok videos, and it got approved. So the US government went away and worked on this report, and then during COVID, it was bizarre that it went so unheralded and so unannounced. It did hit the BBC News over here, but Sophie Rayworth sniggered when she announced it on TV. It was weird that something of such major significance was treated in such a way. But essentially, the US government announced that UAPs exist, but they have no idea what they are. And around the same time, they sanctioned the Congress public meetings that took place, which you may have seen or heard of. And if you follow this sort of thing, you'll see people like Leslie Keane in the background of that as people were speaking. I'm pretty sure Luis Elizondo was in one of the Congress meetings. So yeah, that's the background. And Luis Elizondo has written a book, and I got the hardback. Sorry if that was a bit of a ramble. Frank McDonough, The Weimar Years. Frank McDonough has written, this is the third in the series, but it acts as a prequel. He wrote 2 books on the coming to power and management of power and descent from power of Hitler. And then he wrote this prequel about the Weimar years, 1918 to 1933. I mentioned it before, the period of decadence and, let's say, bohemianism and cultural freedom that existed in Germany before the Nazis came to power. Not read this one. I've read the first McDonough Hitler book, but I haven't got the second one yet. But this was reduced, so I got it knowing that I was going to be reading it at some point. Similar to Truss at 10, I got May at 10. So this is Theresa May's time in government, again by Anthony Selden. Quite a doorstop. 5 to go, I think. Annie Jacobsen, Nuclear War. Nuclear war begins with a blip on the radar screen. This is a minute-by-minute account of what comes next. It has to be read to be believed. So it's non-fiction, obviously, hence it appearing in this particular video. Again, looking forward to it. I touched on this one in my mid-year tag. Oops. The Rise and Fall of Weimar Germany, Vertigo. I talk about it more in my mid-year tag. 3 more. Alien Earths. I collect the penguins with this spine. So yeah, it says Lisa Kaltenegger, director of Cornell's Carl Sagan Institute, is an enthusiastic guide to the search for life beyond our planet. She writes with exemplary clarity about the remarkable diversity of the thousands of planets already identified beyond our solar system and invites readers to share her excitement. I was drawn to the cover because I really do like that cover. I don't know how much will be new to me. It's a subject that I am into quite a bit. There may be stuff that's passed me by. And even if it is stuff that I already know, I'm going to enjoy reading it. And it's not too thick as well. Oh, this got a mention on my mid-year tag as well. The Village News. The truth behind England's rural idyll. So this is about the English village in past times and how time has progressed and how the village has become relevant and how it's changed. It's a nice cover. I really do like the cover. And again, it's a book about rural Britain, which interests me. Final one, which I haven't opened yet, is Ross Williams in his own words, Christian Death and Beyond. If you go to the 8 memories tag that I did, you'll be able to learn about the period of time in the 80s when I followed the band Christian Death to every gig that they did. Ross had left by this stage. He founded the band and then left. So this particular book was, at one stage, I'm sure it was, well, I know it was over 50 quid. It's got a record in it, but the record isn't very good. The book is a product of Cleopatra Records, who have, shall we say, a mixed record of producing items of individuality and quality. Sometimes they're good, sometimes not so good. This particular book focuses on various interviews that Ros did with photographs and what have you. I'm not convinced there'll be too much that I don't know, but because I'm a completist in terms of Ros, I had to get it. And I had some, after me home insurance, when I do home insurance, I do it through a price comparison and then get cash back. And I had about 40 quid's worth of Amazon vouchers, and the price dropped and the stars aligned. So the price dropped to, I think I still paid 41 or 42 or maybe even 43 for it. But because I had the vouchers, yeah, I spent it for people in the unlikely event that someone else watching this wants to get it. By all means, get it if you're a completist. But by far the better Ros book is the 40th anniversary of the Only Theatre of Pain album, which will actually be mentioned in my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 challenge, which will either precede this particular video or will be the one immediately after it, depending on whether I do another video today. I will open it and read it at some point, but I got it for the collection more than anything. So there we go. That's all the non-fiction books I've bought since February. I'm not sure whether it will interest everybody, but it kind of gives an idea of what interests me, gives some background to me and what my passions are. And it just makes a change from being everything about fiction all the time as well. And if you're watching this and if you have a channel, by all means do a video for your non-fiction stuff as well. I'll watch it at least. So there we are. If you like what you've seen, by all means click subscribe, click like. It'd be nice to have you on board watching more videos that I've made. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Goodbye.